All right. So the season has ended. Minnesota will finish at 7-9. Detroit falling to 5-11 today, in a 37-35 game. Now Matthew Stafford, 20 of 31, 64%, 293 yards, a 9.5 average, three scores, one interception, was sacked one time. Not bad for this defense. And the rating of 114. Adrian led them in yards today. 7 carries for 63 yards and 9 average yards per carry, a 38-yard long, and a score. DeAndre Swift led them in carries. 12 carries for 54 yards, 4.5 yards a carry, and 1 score. Stafford 2 for 9, and then Sanu carried 1 time for 3 yards. 22 carries for 129 yards and a 5.9 average with those 2 scores. Now, receiving, Marvin Jones continues to be a pain for Minnesota. 8 receptions on 11 targets, 180 yards, and 2 scores. Probably should have been 3. Average of 22.5. Quintez Cephas, 2 of 3 for 51 yards. TJ Hawkinson caught all 3 of his passes for 25. Swift, 3 of 3 for 16. Sanu, 2 of 6 for 13. Amendola, 1 of 2 for 6. And then Jesse James caught his lone target for 2 yards. They are 5 of 10 on third down, so obviously 50%. 2 of 2 in the red zone, so clearly 100% there, but they were -2 in the turnover margin. 24 minutes and 47 seconds of time possession, 7 penalties, 51 penalty yards. Now Minnesota, Kirk had himself some numbers today. 28 of 40, that's good for 78%, 405 yards, a 10.1 average, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, was sacked 3 times for 127.6 quarterback rating. Now, on the ground, no Dalvin Cook today. That meant Alexander Mattison actually got to carry the football for once. 21 carries for 95 yards and 4.5 yards per carry, and a score with a long of 20 for Alexander Mattison. Boone, 5 carries for 29 yards, a 5.8 average. Kirk, 5 carries, 1 yard, 0.2 average, and a score. And Neil Downs are included in that. But 31 carries total for 125 yards and 4 yards a carry for 2 scores, and the longest run they had was that 20-yarder by Madison. Now, Jefferson led them in receiving yards, 9 of 12 for 133 yards, 14.8 average. Thielen, 4 of 5 for 57. Madison, 3 of 3 for 50. Beebe, 2 of 3 for 44 and a score. Madison also caught a touchdown. And then Ham, 2 of 3 for 44. Conklin, 3 of 6 for 40. Irv, 2 of 3 for 30. Amir caught all 3 of his passes for only 7 yards, but did have a score. Third down, bit of a problem. 4 of 13, 31%. 3 of 6 in the red zone, that's 50%, which is very bleh. And they were +2 in the turnover margin. Held the ball for 35 minutes and 13 seconds. Only 4 penalties for 35 yards. And now we get to the last time I get to say onto the thoughts of actual game. So I think the offense, it played pretty well despite obviously no Dalvin Cook, who is, he's the engine. And then you also have the Hill-Dozier combo on the left side, which is painful to think about. But I think it played well despite that. Second and long runs, I really hope don't return next year, at least not at that prevalent of a frequency. And I think Kirk, he started pretty slow, but certainly picked up, obviously, as the numbers would suggest. Congrats to the rookie, Justin Jefferson. He becomes the Super Bowl era leader for receiving yards. Groman, I think, had like 1477 or something like that before the Super Bowl era. But he did pass Anquan Bolden for Super Bowl era rookie with most receiving yards. So congrats to him on that. Good job him. Didn't start the first 2 games. Obviously, COVID year, things were different. So good job on him. Staying ready, coming in, just ready to go. And like I said, third down today was just a bit of an issue. I think blocking was a bit of an issue. A lot of things were a bit of an issue. But overall, they were able to score points, although aided by a certain roughing the passer call on one of them. Defensively, was our defense played in this game? It's hard to recall defense being played in this game, but there's still no rush. Wasn't really any coverage. Kind of wish Cordrea Tankersley didn't fall so we can actually see if he could have done something maybe in a contested catch situation, but he did fall. Marvin Jones got a wide open score. Happens a lot this year, but it happens. There was no rush defense again, and they allowed 129 yards on the ground, 5.9 yards per carry, to a team that averaged 91.3 yards on the ground, which was good for 31st coming into this game. 4 yards per carry, good for 28th coming into this game. And it's horrible. There's no excuse. I know they're backups, but at the same time, some of these guys don't look like they belong in an NFL roster. I've thought that for weeks, and I keep calling it the preseason defense, and that's mostly because they look like they belong in the third or fourth quarter of a preseason game. It's not because, they didn't have any preseason. That's why they're bad. No, they're this bad because they belong to play in the preseason. That is why. And thankfully, this is the last we will see of the preseason defense. At least on the hopeful side, where hopefully people don't get hurt as much as they did this last year. And hopefully there will be no opt-outs like Michael Pierce next year and things like that. So I'm really hoping that's the end of that. I'd also like to hope Marvin Jones, he is a free agent after this year. I hope he goes somewhere in the AFC. I don't know why. They can't cover him. But overall, the refs seem to kind of hate Detroit in this game. That roughing the passer call, no, don't call that. I kind of think, based on how they've been calling it this year, that was probably a catch by Marvin Jones. I don't know why they overturned it. I thought that was going to just be a stands kind of ruling. Turns out it's an overruled kind of ruling, and I don't know. But that obviously helped them win a bit, but luckily this was an irrelevant game, so if the refs were going to decide a game, this wasn't the worst one to choose. Just because you kind of saw fans on both sides, not saying all fans, but there were some fans on both sides hoping their team would lose. Some on Detroit, some in Minnesota, just how it is. Just because they have nothing to play for, it's for draft picks now. And I know a lot of you will also go in hoping, like just into the offseason here, hoping number 8 is off the team. And I don't think you're going to get it. I really don't. However, what I do think will happen is I kind of expect the defense to get some new additions here, along with the guys returning. Just like currently unavailable players like Kendricks and Barr and Hunter and Pierce, all those guys. So I would anticipate some of that. I'd also anticipate the special teams unit as a whole to get a whole overhaul. Again, starting with the special teams coach probably, then you probably trickle down to Dan Bailey. Don't know if you keep Colquitt. Who knows about the long snapper situation. But yeah, and I honestly kind of think that's the right move for the most part. I know a lot of people will disagree with that just because they hate Kirk a lot. But as of the making of this video, there are only 3 teams that average 30 points per game on offense. That would be the Tennessee Titans at 30 flat, Kansas City 30.1, and the Green Bay Packers at 31.6. After today, so including today's points, Minnesota will have averaged a 29.7 points per game margin allowed there, and that's the exact amount the Bills averaged on offense before today. So the Bills are basically 500 with this defense. Minnesota went 7-9. Minnesota doesn't have a starting caliber left guard. Minnesota has 2 viable wide receivers on the outside. Obviously, Conklin and Irv are actually a pretty decent tight end combo, but that really didn't get to be used into the last 3 or 4 games here because of Kyle Rudolph. Dalvin Cook not there today, but they still got to win. And they have some things, but they also have a lot of things that say you should have been 5-11. The fact they went 7-9 is pretty good. It's kind of miraculous. And it's one reason why I kind of have hope a little bit for next year. It's like if you return all those guys on defense, it's like if you can not allow 30 points per game, you have a chance at the very least to be a playoff contender. At the very least. Just don't allow 30 points per game, which is not asking a lot. That's basically saying just be there, provide some resistance. Because bending and not breaking is better than what this defense is. This is just not there. This is non-existent defense. This is, hey, you want some points? We will give them to you. And, so I'm thinking in this offseason it might be a little interesting, especially if they do decide to go drastic changes, which, once again, not really sure they will, despite how much consensusly the fan base kind of wants it. Don't think you're going to get it. But I would like to know your guys' opinions down below. Comments and stuff helps out. Liking and subscribing also helps out. And until next time, I bid y'all adieu.